If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Tactical Tequila Podcasts. We have a great show planned for you. My guest host, Tommy Oles from the Las Vegas Tequila Club.
Correct.
And we have Jeff Ernst from Package Group.
That'd be me. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
So give us a little bit of your background, Jeff.
My background is a very zigzagged and sort of bumpy road. If you read my resume, you'd really wonder how I ended up here. And it was a very fortunate mistake that I did. But anywhere from the golf industry to senior living to I was a college administrator, college dean for a while, to the tech world, to everything else. In the end, it always kind of boiled down to, you kind of reach a point in life and you realize if you can sell and market things, once you learn a certain industry, you can just be in that industry. It's knowing the skill set made the difference. But I came from a lot of different things, actually, and kind of met my life that way as far as grew up in a military family from the day I was born. So always moved, always had to be adaptive.
Okay.
So
What branch?
Army.
Nice.
Father did 2 tours in Vietnam before I was born.
Wow.
So, and stayed in until I was, I think I might have been 20 or 21 when he retired. So yeah.
Yep. My dad was actually in Vietnam as well. He didn't go to Vietnam, but was stationed in Alaska during Vietnam.
Okay.
So he got lucky and didn't have to go.
Yeah. No, it's something that even to this day, my father's never really spoken about what he did there. So,
and
thank you for that.
Most don't unless they talk to other military members in the era.
Yep.
So you mentioned that you were in the tech world. What did you do in the tech realm?
I did a few things. I off and on had web design firms and things like that and small agencies. Spent 5 years back in the day when this was a thing at Gateway 2000, then Gateway Computers and the cow spotted boxes. Was in sort of the I wouldn't call it the boiler room thing, but it was all.
You can always upgrade your computer every couple of years.
It was a call farm and things like that. And then before I got into this industry, I was before people were saying a lot of things about influencers and whatever. We had a technology platform that was building communities of brand advocates and early influencers. And we had developed a platform to sort of, if you were a brand, you could identify those people and go out and then create engagement around them and give them those surprise and delight moments and authentic brand advocacy as far as it goes. But then there was the Cambridge Analytica scandal with like the Russian.
I think I remember that
voting
scandal,
and all of a sudden, because before that, I could know everything about Tommy I ever wanted to, down to his address and the car that he drove and his license plate. I knew everything about him. That was just all available. Then that went away, and it broke companies like what we had begun to build, as well as anyone else that was kind of in that space using that level of data. And it was coincidentally timed at the time where one of my investors in this social media platform had gotten screwed by a guy, along with a lot of other Chicago area investors, out of about $750,000.
Wow.
A guy had said he had the rights to G4 in the U.S. And so this investor asked me, hey, Jeff, you want to help me with this tequila? I still want to do it, even though I got screwed out of the money. And that was sort of that fortunate accident and where that sort of led down.
So G4 came out of that, you guys really being involved with G4. But when did G4 come about as a company, as a brand?
G4, I think, is a brand. Yeah, I think it's been 13 years now that it may have been out. That's as long as it's been for the distillery, as far as that's been.
Yep.
But, I think, along the way, Shawn, we've been involved with it now for 9 years.
Okay.
But prior to us, there was a gentleman that's out there that's still running around these days and trying to cheat more people out of money, who he screwed Felipe out of a truckload of tequila as well.
Wow.
That floated around. And then there was one truck that was entrusted to somebody, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, out of San Diego that had that. But other than that, we were really the first ones really doing anything with it in the U.S. as far as that goes. So,
wow, tumultuous beginnings.
there's a lot of brands that go that way. You look at it, and it's funny how it's worked out the way we did, because when Shawn and I got into this business, we didn't know our head from our ass about it.
Yep.
We knew how to sell and market things and how to build brands, but we didn't know a thing about distribution or selling or what. You just got out, we got asked to help to market it to start with. We're doing the website, we're doing social media, because that's what we knew how to do.
Sure.
And then we figured it out from there.
What was one of the biggest hurdles you think starting, like importing and distributing?
It's the actual distribution part. The people don't realize it's like, when you see all the, what would it take to start a tequila brand? And back when this, it's dying down a lot, but 3-4 years ago, when everyone wanted to start a tequila brand, I had a speech that was down pat as to why this was a really bad idea. First off, you're going to burn about $2 million, unless you just plan on that being gone. Don't even start it. Yada, yada, yada. Getting, pick a bottle, pick a label, pick someone to produce it. That's the easy part, right? Get about 10, 20 grand in legal work to make sure you get it registered with MP down in Mexico and get all your TTB and get your licenses. And you too can have a tequila brand. But then you got to go find distribution. And then you got to find a way for the distributor to actually care about it if they actually decide to bring it on. And then you've got to compete at the next trade level as far as that goes. Sorry, I talk a lot with me. But you've got to find a way for them to care about your brand in those ways. But, that's really where we in Package Group have found our niche is we talk about ourselves really as operators, right? We are the people that are in that space that have these distribution relationships. We have these key relationships across the country. And, while Shawn and I walked into this not knowing, and we learned along the way and developed our relationships and all the thing. But, we have 2 other partners that have got 20 and 30 plus years in the industry that knew that side very strongly as well. But that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Getting a product made and getting it here is fine, but how do you make it sell?
Right.
Then once you sell it once, how do you get them to buy it again?
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about brand building, and obviously you've done that with G4 and some other brands. But when I see you and Shawn and the rest of the team at Package Group, I see more than just a brand building team. I see it's more than brand building for you guys.
It is.
And as you mentioned the word relationships.
Yeah.
And in the agave world, it's obviously a lot of relationships. We discussed earlier about people that we've had relationships with in the industry. But with you guys, it seems like it's more familial to you guys.
I used to hate it when people use these words because they're so cliche about being, humble and grateful and whatever. But in this very short period of time, especially in the last couple of years, roughly 3 years, where we started importing some of the brands instead of, for the first 6-7 years we were in the business, what we really were was hired sales guns. Right. So, we launched LeBron's tequila in the world for the first year. We did, this, John.
So you're the ones.
Yes, we're the ones. John Cena's RTD brand and this and that and the other, and we had our hands in a lot of things. We were just paid, hired sales guys.
Sure.
But, we worked with Felipe over those years, and that's really what became important. And then to us, as we started picking brands, and now it is very, very much our ethos and our stickers over there somewhere. But that is our line in the sand now, because that's what gives us passion and purpose, is these families entrust us with their family's best. It's not, everything is 100% owned by that Mexican family that produces these spirits. We don't have any ownership in it. Everything else, we get entrusted with bringing their family's best to market. And, we see, when I don't recall, but there's maybe, when we first met Felipe, 8 or 9 people working at the distillery.
Wow.
Now there's 50 plus.
Yeah.
And we see Felipe, on top of a skid loader building things as fast as he can between the new dry goods building and the new aging cellar, the new cava, and, getting more ovens built and all these things. or from Tres Gallos and hearing the stories of, this town where there really weren't any jobs. And well, now the women in town might be working on the bottling line, but they have a job.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that adds such a different purpose to it. That we don't get up, we don't see that anyone is working for us. We don't make demands that way. We're working for them. We're doing this because that's what matters to us.
Makes sense.
Well, that just goes to show, like, in that time span, how many people they started with, and now the growth that they've done. I mean, I think that's exponential on, what it says about their product, and, the ability for you guys to market it, to sell it, to...
It does it. And that is something that actually does make us different. Most people, when they're importers, they just bring it in and try to sell it.
Right.
We actually, Shawn and I have a long history as marketers, and we started doing the marketing for these brands. And if you look at what G4 has had out there for marketing over the last 8-9 years, that has all been done on our side of the fence. Felipe will always say, well, we've never spent a dime on marketing. Like, well, Felipe, we've literally spent millions.
Yeah.
And now we actually have a dedicated team that's going to be doing nothing but creating content around every brand that's there. So it's, that is the space we do. And it kind of makes a differentiator, because these brands usually, that isn't their skill set. They might know some people who do so. And, people from Ultramundo, Sergio has a great, feel on that. Or you've got the Tres Gallos folks who have some resources and know how to do those things. But by and large, that's usually a gap. And it's left to whatever the market will bring.
Well, and not only that, but you also have the social media, social media influencers who market it as well, and you get that free advertisement, free marketing from those individuals, and some individuals, they could probably move thousands of cases.
Some can, but very few do. You get those in a lot of the, the influence space, and as someone who was in marketing for a very long time, and it's an interesting question, because if you look at most of the tequila influencers, or you look at a lot of the trips of influencers that goes down, a lot of times it gets very close these days to being the same 20 or 30 people. And when I was a marketer, most of my LinkedIn feed and everything else was marketers marketing to other marketers about marketing.
Right.
And now you're talking about, a lot of times these influencers have the same cross section of 25, 30,000 people. And eventually they're all saying the same things to the same people. Now, luckily for a lot of brands, you're reaching early adopters, right? So that's getting new traction, new things to pick up. But if you're looking for broader, then the roadmap becomes a little less clear. And that's where, frankly, where G4 has reached in 2 years. We've grown the brand since we took over as the importer 2 years ago. It's grown 1,000%, literally.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Does that worry you? I mean, it's great, but at the same time, it seems like it's really, really fast.
It doesn't, because there's backstory to it. I think it could have been doing more before.
Okay.
And then you went through pandemic times where there was only so much.
Sure.
But there was always a bit of a pent up demand. And the other thing we've never done is we've never sacrificed any way other than building the brand on fundamentals.
It's now reaching its potential.
It's reaching its potential. We believe its potential is still 2 to 5 times more.
That's awesome.
But now we have to go, well, wait a minute, if we're talking to advertising, if we're looking at influence, if we're looking at relationships in the trade, how are we going to reach that next level? So those are the problems we face next year is, oh goodness, how do we all of a sudden, if I want to go from roughly 100,000 boxes this year, which is what we'll do, to 200,000 next year, it's not going to happen in just the same place.
Sure.
But
how many states are you in, G4?
Right now, we are in 32.
Okay.
But after the first of the year, we'll see a pretty dramatic expansion. You're going to see us get into about 47 states by the end of the first quarter. So
15 added just right off the bat.
Yeah, it'll be, we haven't announced anything on it really yet, but it's one group that's taking a lot of the other states that, when you look at the percentage of tequila sales nationwide, it maybe only adds up to 10%. But
10% is good.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah. But, it's, and to me as a South Dakota boy, right?
Yeah.
the fact that, sometime by the end of Q1, hopefully next year, I'll be able to go home and I visit my daughter who lives just across the border in Southwest Minnesota. And if I go to a bar in either of those areas, I might be able to have some G4. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's one of the brands I look for first off in a bar wherever I go.
Right.
Because I know I can probably find it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or, close by.
For sure. With G4 being, I would say your flagship.
Absolutely.
How many other brands do you have under the portfolio?
Well, right now we have 3 tequilas. We have G4, which, by and large is absolutely our workhorse. That's dancing with the one that brought us here, right? Then you've got El Ateo, which has been released in primarily right now. It's been Nevada, Arizona, California with Total Wine, but in the new year you're going to see that expand really across their footprint. And then El Viejito, which is the first tequila that was made in a Totonilco. You talk about the town that has Don Julio and Patron. You say Don Julio in 1942. Well, they've been around since 1937, so 5 years before. So we've got those 3 tequilas as far as that goes, and we're working on a packaging that is more American-centric. It's one of the things that, as much as we all love the old El Tesoro olive oil bottles, or any of the old traditional bottles, El Viejito had a very traditional bottle, and we shop with our eyes first, and so we're going through that with them right now. But then we also have 2 mezcals. We have Palomo, which is out of Oaxaca, and Carlos Mendez Blas is a wonderful and dynamic young producer, but 5th generation family as far as producing that. Can really make anything when it comes to mezcal, and does that very, very well. And we always kind of lead with a liter bottle that you can usually get on the shelf for about $39.99 sort of thing.
Does he stick with one maguey with that, or
no? He makes anything. And actually, some of the neatest stuff he did, the stuff we just started importing the end of last year, because he does have the Tobalas and Tempestates and all the others. But we said, well, what matters more to you, Carlos? Because in the end, it's not about us; it is about them.
Mm-hmm.
And he has these great, we call them destilados, but they're really mezcals con, right? Mezcal con café, con cacao, and con mole. So he's got some infused natural ones that are, literally family recipes.
Nice.
Things like that. Real Oaxacan coffee, real Oaxacan cacao. The mole, just mind-blowing as far as that goes, but using espadín. But really, really reasonably priced. Again, for a $7.50 bottle, maybe $45.
Wow, in the mezcal world, that's very approachable.
And everything he does is that way.
Yeah.
He does what I would call artisanal at scale. Instead of having bigger stills and bigger equipment, he just builds more and more and more of these tiny little stills and tiny little things, and they still have horse-drawn Tahona.
Oh, wow.
And then we have Mezcal Ultramundo, which is from Durango. Super interesting story when you look at that. And if you look at the label, you see it all.
It's so cool.
There's little UFOs flying around there and desert tortoises. So
Vegas, we need to have Vegas so quickly.
It's a very, I think, sort of similar. And actually the biosphere, it's the same desert as where we're here in Vegas as far as that goes. But for them, they have it's called the Zona del Silencio, the zone of silence, where there's all these rumors of the UFOs and the other things and this and that and the other. If you ask the locals, the story kind of is that we crashed an Apollo space probe there back in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And local lore has that the American government probably found some plutonium.
Sure, probably.
And probably.
Sure, it's not around either one.
Yeah. And at that point, then, a space probe is the size of a small Volkswagen, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that could just be brought out by a semi. But they built railroads into the desert and blocked this off forever. It very quite probably that our government just mined the shit out of it for like 20, 30 years, right?
Of course.
But it's made from a very, very difficult to work with agave called Agave Lamparillo. Takes a long time, up to 20 years, to mature.
What's the name of the agave again?
Lamparillo.
I've never heard of it.
There's only a couple marks made with it because you literally, it's almost wooden, like has to be harvested with an axe type thing. And the sugars out of it, you get roughly, whereas, everyone knows the whole 7 kilos per bottle of agave of tequila. you basically get a bottle of plant.
Wow.
That's so low sugar. It's very difficult to work with, but the taste experience is amazing.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've got Tres Gallos Raicillas. At some point, I want you guys to try this as well.
Can't wait.
We don't bring anything called Tres Gallos because if we brought anything that had Gallo in the name of it, Gallo threw the crap out of it. So they make 3 marks. They make El Acabo, which is talk of the harvest, and that's the term there, is their Joven. And then they make this, which to my knowledge, there really isn't any other aged Raicilla. These are brilliant.
Sure.
It's done in a smaller American oak barrel. And the flavors are just kind of mind-blowing, and you get the barrel notes mixed with some sort of tropical fruit.
New oak? Old oak?
No.
Nice. And what are we drinking, Matt?
So tonight we are drinking G4 High Proof.
Why would we do that?
Wow.
Because it's food.
This is kind of the truth teller of all, right? When you get up to pushing that limit of what can be called tequila for proof, that's where you can't cover up any other sins either, right?
Well, this is quintessential tequila in my book, so.
Agreed. And for me, like, I'm a still strength or a high proof Blanco person.
Is that a fad?
I think it is.
Is it?
But not for me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I feel like, and you could think I'm crazy or whatever, but you're gonna get. I feel from the other expressions, like if you have a great Blanco, you're gonna get a fairly decent Reposado Añejo.
Well, you have to start with her.
Yeah. So with the base, like I feel like if I like their Blanco or their high proof, like I'm gonna like all the other expressions of the brand as well.
Not to go off topic, sorry to go down this road, but you're the importer.
Yeah.
With still strengths, it seems to be really popular right now. What is obviously G4 still strength is getting high marks among the still strength folks.
Sure.
What is your take on the still strength movement right now? It's like a movement.
It is a movement, and you'll see it just kind of like, and I'll use this as an example, is, when we first started bringing in El Ateo, is Total Wine's, maybe we're not sure yet, but now they've approved, and eventually you'll see their
so the still strength for El Ateo is not in Total Wine.
It's not in right now.
Okay.
But it will be coming because they've now approved that. Okay. Because they do see this sort of trend and doing enough volume to actually earn that space on the shelf.
So they've earned the trust. They trust it. To me, I always kind of look back to what bourbon did, say, 20 years ago. And bourbon 20 years ago, a lot of it was, 80 proof. Yeah. There was the bottled in bond and there was the 100 proof things, but most of it was 80 proof. Then all of a sudden, when the craft took off, then you start seeing the 120 and 130 and, the core enthusiast going, I want more fire, which, I don't get that because it's corn liquor. Yeah.
But I think this might be sort of that same trend, is that people, once they get used to drinking real tequila, which we're still on that curve, people are still getting used to kicking Casamigos to the curb and realizing it doesn't taste like a vanilla cupcake. But they're drinking
right.
when they start drinking real tequila now, those people, I think, in a few years are going to realize, okay, well, más fuerte. I want more flavor, and I see this as being something that will continue. But when that happens, just like you were talking about how you've got to like the Blanco, you've got to like the still strength. Reposado and Añejo barreling can cover up a lot of sins. You've got to do this right. So there's still only so many brands that are going to be able to come out with something, north of 45%, that is going to be really enjoyable.
Well, I'm a Paloma guy for my cocktails, and I'll use either G4 108 or some other brands that have 110.
Yeah.
And it's not because they need to be mixed in a cocktail. It's because I need to still be able to taste the agave and make trust. So that's what I'll use for sure.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned before, how important relationships are in what you do. What would you say that you look for in brands in order to pick them up?
For us, it is, we've got to actually, anymore, we would never pick up a brand without sitting down and breaking bread, meeting people face to face and getting to know them. It is about the people first. And once we can decide that they're good people, the next part really is, okay, if we take them on this ride, are they ready for it, right? Because there are going to be some growing pains. Things take longer to happen than what you would expect. But then once they happen, are you able to do that? And then understanding what they've got inside the liquid. There's a lot of great families who, in our opinion, just for generations, haven't maybe been making tequila the right way, but it's a great business for them. Well, and now I have my family's brand. I'd like you to work with that one. That just doesn't do that for us. So it's not a judgment on them because they've been very successful working within the norma, but it just isn't the business we want to be. But it is getting to know those people. It's getting there and spending time. I mean, I typically speaking on an average month, average whatever, Shawn or I, one of us is down in Mexico every 2 weeks.
Nice.
Wow.
So, a lot of it is just checking in on making sure we, a lot of times, as Felipe would say, he says, "Oh, why is Jeff so upset?" And I'm not, because what I do is I do it
For Felipe to say that was something.
Yeah, but because I try to do things, I'm trying to do it for Felipe and his sons, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm very passionate about that. So I get animated sometimes on, hey, we just want you to do this because we're trying to do the right things for them. So there's that. But it's getting down there and just being face to face, because it is still very much a culture where face to face goes and accomplishes more in a couple days than months and months of emails and calls. And I'm happy the culture is that way. I mean, to me, that makes far more sense than, if I just email you and call you and send you an Excel spreadsheet,
Sure.
Great. But that's not a relationship.
So, yeah, it doesn't really motivate.
No.
It doesn't create.
So would you say that, with your passion and everything that you do within the agave world, what would you say that has probably been one of those things that resonate with you within the industry?
To me, it's community, right? So when I was down 4 weeks ago for Posada, the holiday party for El Pendio, the day before that, just because the timing lined up, we got to go to the Posada for IGL.
Oh, cool.
And if you're in this space and in the craft side of the space, IGL, Hector Banda, it is basically who ships all of our tequila across the border and gets it to its final destination. Hector's responsible for all these brands. And to go to this party and to see all of these families and all of these people that we call friends. I run into, Eduardo Arndane Jr., who I haven't seen in a few years face to face, but just to be able to pick up and as friends, and Jaime and to run into Chavo Rosales and to run into all these people that are there that you've met throughout the years. And it is a very, very small community. And so when I don't ever try to name drop when I'm somewhere where there's not good tequila, but if all of a sudden I see something at the bar and it's someplace that doesn't have G4 and I'm drinking Fortaleza, hey, I'm humbled that I know, that Guillermo is a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that I've known these people. So that to me was that whole thing in a microcosm, was that party to see all of those people I consider to be friends that I've been fortunate to get to know over these last 9 years. That's that industry. And everyone it's not competition. It's not whatever. It's just friendship. It's, it's loyalty. It's brotherhood, right?
That's the one thing I've noticed too in this kind of realm of tequila is it's there's not really much competition among brothers. Seems like what brother and sisters, I should say.
Yeah.
Some great women tequila makers.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely there are. Absolutely.
And it doesn't seem like it's competition. In fact, it feels like everyone's building it upon each other.
Yeah.
And
it is.
Seems like what's happening. It's been happening for a while, but it seems like it's happening even more now.
It's especially amongst that community.
Yeah.
It's never one against the other there. They'd prefer to see all of them win. It's them fighting for what a lot of them are the traditional ways of making tequila. And they're fighting for somewhat the soul of the spirit, as well as, if anything, then they're fighting against it being diluted and the biggest brands, right?
Root of agave.
Yeah. And, that's one thing that I've noticed in my short time of, coming into the agave world is just how much of a community, I I consider it the same as the law enforcement community. You know, it's like a brotherhood.
Blue line.
Yeah,
Well, in this case, it's a thin,
it's a thin green line.
Azul
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. that shade of blue screen.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that there's so much more camaraderie. There's so much more just like family ties, as a cliche term, but I feel like, it's such a tight knit group. And if you're one to speak out against, like, it's going to come back at some point again.
Yeah. No, it's something that you just don't want to see people really, and no one really exhibits that. I mean, even some of them come to, each other's, if you consider them competition,
right?
Come to each other's posadas, right?
Right.
Sergio Cruz was at the El Pandillo Posada.
I saw that. Yeah.
And he was there last year as well. And he's an invited guest and he's a friend. And, all of those people are. So it's definitely not that way. This is something where they do their work. They're all very, very humble about it.
We passionate.
Yeah, we try our, as Felipe says, words usually the effect of, we're sort of humble farmers. We try our best, and we hope you like what we make.
Yeah.
Right? There's never boastful about it. There's never whatever.
Yeah.
They know what they're making is good, but we try hard to do our best.
We have a mutual friend, Ray Herrera.
Sure.
He in his house, there's a picture. It's the Last Supper painting, but has a bunch of maestros on it.
Oh, nice.
And it's like this exactly. I'm picturing Ray's painting of the Last Supper of all these maestros. I don't know if you've ever seen that painting in this house.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to go over to Ray's house.
Oh, yeah.
We got to do that sometime.
So it's amazing. But it has everyone from Guillermo to Felipe to Chava to all these guys on there. And that's I think of Ray's painting that he has in his house, and I think of like the camaraderie in the agave world. So,
in all of your travels to Mexico, what is it that you feel that attracts you to the culture?
I feel at home there, and you feel the warmness and sincerity. It's one of the things that I almost say it aggravates me is if anyone asks me if they go to, is it safe?
Right.
I
think every time I go.
That's the number one question that we have posed on this podcast is it safe? And
it's as a guy that, spent the last decade before this living in Chicago, I always felt fine living in Chicago. There were places I didn't go in Chicago.
Yeah.
No different than New York, Guadalajara. If you don't go somewhere you shouldn't be at 3 a.m. and be stupid, or go down there and, wear a gold presidential Rolex, you'll be just fine.
Yep.
You're at home. They're good people who are happy, that are there to care for you.
Most generous people ever.
The most generous people. And to me, that's always been a part of it, is just that feeling of warmth and comfort. There's no one moment, there's no whatever, but I'm not known, never have been known my whole life, sort of, is raised by my military father. I'm not a hugger, I'm not a whatever. Down there, that's what changed me. That's what made me different, to express those things and be, hey, hermano, it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
I mean, every trip that I've taken in the last year, I've been down there. I think this last trip was 4 times in the last year. And, it's always the same. There's always those people that are amazing. I've never had an experience where I've had bad people around me. And maybe there were, but, just never noticed. But coming from someone who is always on super high alert, based on my background and my, what I do, I've never come across that. And when people ask me, is it safe? Yes, it's safe to a point. Like, you don't want to be the quote unquote stupid American.
Correct.
Like, and so, this is one thing that we were always taught in the military: don't be the dumb American. Don't go out there looking for trouble. Don't go out there just spouting off, being overly intoxicated and all that stuff. If you go down there just to enjoy yourself and have a good time, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Long story short, it's a great place to freak.
It is.
Agreed.
You know, it just is. There is that coexistence with things that aren't always going to be favorable. I mean,
Sure.
on the drive to the El Vito distillery, you can drive along, you look up on a ridge on one side, and there's a lookout tower. But that is a cartel lookout tower. And you continue down that road a little bit farther, and right on the road, there is a shrine to Santa Muerte, right? And one time I was there, and there was a journalist in the car who literally written articles about Santa Muerte and all the things that went into it. And yeah, that's real, but there's no reason for you to intersect with that.
Right.
That's what I tell people too, is like equate it to like the olden days of Vegas.
Sure.
When you came to Vegas, you came to have a good time. Vegas was ran by some seedy individuals back in the day.
Yeah.
Those were the best guys to go patronize their casinos because they treated you right as long as you treated them right.
Exactly.
And that's kind of how I tell people there. I've been to some places where I was given instruction before I went to certain bars in Mexico on the outside of Guadalajara. And I was treated the best in those bars.
Yeah.
Because I was there to spend my money and have a good time. I wasn't there to mess with their money and have a bad time.
And that's the way they see it is, if you're here to make me money, like, I'm okay with you. If you start causing a problem,
hospitality goes a long ways. Hospitality built Vegas back in the day.
Sure.
It's building certain industries in Mexico.
Yeah.
So we've all had this bad experience at some point with tequila.
No.
What has been your bad experience?
And it's kind of funny, I think, about the 9 years that I've been in this industry. And for the first few years, Shawn and I were the guys doing every tasting and every event and everything we could. And we, if I heard it once, I heard it 100,000 times of that one night in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I had that one night in college. It was on Cuervo, and it was blackout drunk and everything else.
Unmixed up.
No different than, it's unmixed up.
Yeah.
Nothing that was special or unique to it, and enough to the point that it wasn't even memorable. I remember
it was mixed with something.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have those, but I know everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is that if I think about it, where at the trade shows I did 8-9 years ago, it was every other conversation. I don't have those with the frequency now, which to me is encouraging.
I've
that
noticed
people are actually starting to understand what tequila is about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's definitely been a reputation shift with tequila in general.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely been a class change, which I hate to think of it like that because tequila's always been good. It's just we've a lot of tequila.
Well, they all have their fireball now, right?
Well, and there's always been that stipulation or the connotation of, hey, tequila's the shot.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're starting
lime and salt.
Yeah.
Now you're starting to see people sip it more and enjoy it the way that it should be.
Sure.
As opposed to, hey, let's
still some really
salt, suck a lime, and
there's still some really pretty bottles that have sparklers on top, though.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But
no, from experience.
Well, I mean, I live in Vegas.
Bottle share.
I mean, there's some beautiful bottles out there, but I'm into the liquid myself. But...
Agree.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed in a previous interview that you did, you said Blanco stability is where you're going as far, or where you're at as far as and you're looking at doing repo stability into añejo stability. What does that look like in the next 5 years?
Well, for us, it was, we had, and, we're very, very fortunate in what we built with G4, and over 9 years of building the brand here in the U.S. We have built such a demand, and with Felipe making such incredible liquid, that the demand still outstrips supply by at least twofold. Every case, every bottle, every whatever that leaves the distillery is 100% pre-sold before it leaves the distillery.
Oh, wow.
So when we know a truck is coming, one of the things I will do is I will, go through and talk to my partners and go, okay, this is how we're allocating this truckload. And I send out emails saying, this is what you get to order. And the truck comes in and the truck goes out and they wait for the next, right? Well, what that doesn't lead to when you talk about the growth of the brand is that gets you to a certain, right? That, if you look at what Fortaleza is as far as I go, that gets you to a certain. But if you want to do the things that actually create massive growth for the brand while still being able to retain its heritage or its roots, not changing anything about the spirit itself, you've got to find your way onto cocktail menus. You've got to find your way into chain retailers. You've got to do those things and be able to support consistency and reliability on the shelf. And we couldn't do that up until, at the beginning of last year, I kind of drew a line in the sand. I said, we will have Blanco stability. And we got that, right? We got it so that the industry actually started to trust the brand again, because it couldn't really trust that before, that it was going to be there. And so now we've shown a year plus of, okay, Blanco's going to be there for you. And, we're shipping to certain markets. We're shipping them at a truckload at a time every 30 to 60 days. And so with that in mind, okay, we trust that now. So my goal for this year is, hey, 108 and a Reposado, I want those stable as well. It'll be curious. I've committed to having Reposado being stable this year. And I know with Felipe's new Cava how much we can roughly get. But if you know the industry numbers, Reposado in relation to Blanco grew about 12, 13% last year. And that popularity is continuing of the Reposado again. It's seeing a resurgence in it. And I don't know that when I open up the floodgates a little bit more, is there more behind the gates that I'm aware of? Right. But that said, by comparison, we expect to have around 4 times the Reposado in the U.S. next year than we had last year.
That green label was always kind of hard to get.
Right.
So. And it still is, and it still has. And it was, I think we maybe got, just off the top of my head, probably 12,000 cases, of it this year. And it's in and it's out.
I was gonna say 12,000 isn't that much.
And, but we're hoping to get closer to 50,000 next year.
Wow.
And in doing so, then, hey, if you want that repo and a cocktail at whatever restaurant,
right,
great. And you've got places like in town here. We've been very, very fortunate that the beverage director of the Cosmopolitan, you can find G4 all over the Cosmo.
Yeah.
And as much repo as he can get his hands on, he's going to take.
Awesome.
Right.
Nice.
So,
yeah, repo has always been one I've just kind of saved for just sipping, because it's not often that you can actually get it in this town.
Oh, and hats off to Men's Journal for calling it the 2025 Sipping Tequila of the Year. Right.
I saw that.
Certain celebrities need to eat their heart out.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of celebrities, going back to so you had launched LeBron's Tequila Lobos. What decided that you guys wanted to part ways, or?
No, it was really sort of a mutual thing. As far as that goes, at a certain point, any brand does, and it's sort of a flaw of the business model we were in initially, right? So if you're a new brand to the space and you've got some money and you've got some aspirations and everything else, okay, if you don't know the space, you want someone who's a known operator who can kind of get you across the line. But at a certain point, they only want to pay so much. And we had that time, we had a small portfolio of brands we were selling. Well, that brand really does want dedicated 100% attention. And they can't get that without paying a whole lot more. So, every brand at that time, they want 50 sales reps across the country, but yet they only want to pay maybe $20,000 a month for it. And those numbers don't add up.
Right.
So they're split attention. They want more. So when they get to a certain size, they want to have their own team anyway. So that was always sort of that model is an interesting accelerator space, but one that just has built-in turnover of the brands. So no, we know some of the people that are on that team, and, Diego is the founder of it, and Dia Sims and others that are there, good people. And, we got to a certain point and we started to become a square peg in a round hole, especially with the culture that they wanted to execute on, because, they are very much people who know celebrity and culture lifestyle. We're not those guys. I mean, if you've met us, we're not those guys. Yeah. Right. So if you're wondering if we were going to be, hanging at, Tao in town and doing whatever and having the hype party there.
Sparklers on top of the bottles.
Yeah. We're not those guys. So keep the sparklers at home.
All right. So.
4th of July.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bottle that's on the table that I haven't tried ever, and I'm going to try.
Yeah.
So
That means we have to drink this though, or get another glass. We want to drink this on the air, right?
We
do.
drink this on the air. We want to drink this.
So why don't you give us a little bit about the bottle here?
So as everybody kind of looks for what's next in agave,
Mm-hmm.
and Raicilla is one of those. And this is one where Shawn has sort of, if you see some of the things the package is doing with some of the media these days, as far as the films we're creating.
Awesome, by the way.
I can't take any gratitude for that. I
My
appreciate that.
It's gotten so much better since
But,
videos.
Shawn has taken it to a different level. So me, as someone lifelong of asthma and things like that. So when COVID came about, I didn't travel as much.
Mm.
And before, I was the one kind of traveling with a lot greater frequency. But during COVID, Shawn's like, nope, I'll go. And so he was the one down there, and he got into this habit of going down more to Mexico. But then he got into really exploring into the culture, and he started going on vacations down there for weeks at a time, and going Raicilla hunting and coming across, driving across roads that, frankly,
It's like a wild
gringo shouldn't be on.
Sure.
And, coming
been there.
legends like Lobo and Hapo and guys like that, and going to some of these festivals, and really coming back with a lot of things in
plastic bottles.
In plastic bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of these trips, he came across the Lavacilla family that has Taberna Tres Gallos, which, basically it was a property that's been in their family for a very, very long time. And it, with the economic opportunities, kind of had left town, but the family has enough resources. They're successful business people. Otherwise, they started rebuilding the hacienda, the family hacienda, as sort of a tourism sort of thing.
Awesome.
But as well, then got into making Raicilla. And, it was one of the things. And now that there is a nascent, relatively new DO for Raicilla,
right?
Alvaro, who's one of the three brothers. It's Tres Gallos because there's three brothers involved in this. Alvaro is actually the president of the DO.
Oh,
and
wow.
One of the things in the U.S. that if you talk to like a bigger liquor store chain owner, they're like, I hate Raicilla. Why? Well, I love to drink it, but it's inconsistent. And it's not like they're trying to make Raicilla bland,
right?
But in creating a certification of the method and a norma that really is producer driven, it's sort of the opposite, I would say, of the CRT, and that the CRT is really sort of a chamber of commerce organization.
Mm-hmm.
This is really driven for the protection of the spirit and of the producers.
So this is a true deal.
It's a true deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, but they've got this wonderful spirit. It's been aged in American oak, smaller casks than the typical size, for a couple years. And I think it's just the flavors are
What are the size of the casks?
You asked me that, and I believe
5-gallon casks?
No. It's somewhere around 33.
Okay, just smaller than
slightly smaller.
Okay, I see. Not like a desk cask.
No,
not like something you'd find in Felipe's office.
No, which is still, it's not in his office anymore. It's moved outside his office, but it's still there.
Okay, it's gonna lose some of that aroma.
It's literally just right outside the door. It's not far.
Okay.
Wow, that's got a great nose to it.
Wow. So I've had some other Raicillas that I drink out of a pint bottle. They come usually pint-sized bottles. I'm not going to mention brand names, but I do like Raicilla.
I'm going to say that this is actually my first Raicilla.
Really?
So,
well, there you go. It's
usually though I'm drinking out of a brand that has a snake on the cover.
Okay.
I mean Venenos, but
yeah,
and I like it. So
yep.
Oh, wow, I like that a lot.
I just never had an aged Raicilla, I don't think.
I honestly don't know if there's another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
This might be the only one that is out there as far as I'm aware.
This is amazing.
Very,
So, when you look at it, it's a 7-year-old agave to do it. It's all brick oven. And if you've seen how Raicilla is produced, it's a far more humble and time-consuming operation as far as making it.
I dropped my caramel apple in a hayfield.
Yeah.
That's what that tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
Caramel apple and hay. Grass. Not hay, but grass.
But isn't it just delicious? You get that little bit of
this you can sip on all night.
Like a shell tropical fruit note to it. And this is still at 90 proof, right?
So if someone wanted to find this out, anywhere at a store, or where can they find it?
You still got to hunt for this one a little bit yet.
Okay.
We've had it in market since June or July of last year.
Markets where?
It is across probably 20 some states right now. I'd have to look.
Oh, so it's in multiple states.
Yeah, it's in multiple states.
Is it in Nevada?
It is not yet.
Okay.
It will be soon.
Well, there's one bottle in Nevada.
Well, there's two. There's two. There's two. But it is one of those things when people experience that, or they experience that Mezcal Ultramundo that we've got, that they're just such unique flavor experiences that don't have a different point of reference. You won't go, this tastes like something else. You won't say that, Ultramundo tastes just like this other Mezcal. They just don't.
You still get definitely get the age,
Mm-hmm.
but you still get the grassy notes of Raicilla.
You get the grassy notes, you get that tropical, that hard shell tropical, like a mangosteen type note.
I get a lot of caramel on it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of caramel. What's the barrels again?
It's just American oak.
Just New American oak barrel.
Wow.
With a char.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaking good.
Yeah.
I've never had aged Raicilla.
No.
I'm pretty sure. And so, okay, purists would say, oh, you shouldn't age certain spirits. I'm sure you probably have that in the Raicilla world. You have it in the tequila world. You definitely have it in the mezcal world. But obviously, proof is in the pudding. Aging definitely didn't hurt it.
No, it doesn't hurt it. And that is, it comes into a conversation when it comes to these other agave spirits that are coming out, right? If you talk about, even where mezcal is at on the growth curve, if you talk about mezcal, if you talk about Bacanora, if you talk about Sotol, you talk about Raicilla as just, slivers of a percent compared to what tequila is. And was tequila at a certain point aged? Probably not, right? What was gold tequila? Well, that just became some way to put something in a bottle and all the other things.
Barrels just became a way to preserve.
Right.
So when you look at those different vectors, I would rather see innovation go in the way of honoring the spirit and finding ways to barrel it to get a different profile than innovation being chemical manipulation or filtering the spirit out of it and putting things back in.
Sure.
We're
not going to see any Cristalino Raicillas.
Well, there's actually a family that makes Raicilla, and they make very good Raicilla. To put Cristalino on the label, because in Mexico they will buy it if it says Cristalino on it, right? And
personal preference, sorry.
Right.
No, it is, and but same thing. In the norma for anything, the term Cristalino does not exist. So when we have these discussions about what is it, but and there's a Cristalino mezcal, right? And that's a celebrity brand. I forget which one, but there's a Cristalino mezcal.
I don't need anything filtered. If it needs to be filtered, it's wrong,
right?
I would rather see the spirit honored and be put in a barrel and rested for an amount of time than someone deciding they needed to strip things away, then likely add sugar and agave on the backside or something else to have it taste like what it was supposed to start with.
Yeah.
That's not innovation.
Counterintuitive. You're just making the product wrong in the first place, so you have to fix it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
that's delicious. Tobacco, too.
Yeah.
A little tobacco.
Yeah.
In a very, very good way. Wow, that is good. It's probably one of the best Raicillas I've ever had.
It's my only, and I will say that you have tainted me.
Tainted? Okay. Well, speaking of, never mind. Speaking of taints,
Listen.
Okay, so aside from the agave world and everything else in your business, what makes Jeff Ernst tick?
His boat.
It was one of those things that I'm 53 years old now.
God, that's old.
I know, I'm old.
Am I the youngest guy here?
How old are you?
43.
I'm 40. I'll be 47 next.
Yeah. Well, when I lived not almost, up until I started to call Vegas home here a couple of years ago.
Welcome to Vegas.
Thank you. No one will call me local yet. I think it's a 2 or 5 or 10
It's
year
5 plus,
timeline.
but once you get 5
like that,
you're native.
Listen, if you've lived here over a year, I consider you a local.
I appreciate that. You're one of like 3 people in town that do.
Well,
I've been here 10 years.
if you're here for 5 years, you're a native. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But when I turned 50, so lived in Chicago area for 10 years before that. That was the warmest winter climate I'd ever lived in.
wow.
So I was, although I was born in LA, like say military family, if I call anywhere home, I call South Dakota home.
Okay.
And I've lived
Which gets a lot of snow and it's cold.
it gets a lot of snow.
So beautiful though.
very
Spearfish
Yeah.
Canyon. Oh,
Well, if you get to the west side of the state, I've
Yeah.
lived on both the northeast, southeast, and the west side of the state.
all the corners.
The west side is where all the pretty stuff is. There's a
So
river,
Wyoming.
yeah, there's a river that runs through the middle of it. After that, it's just flat,
Okay.
right? And then it gets flat and cold and more snow.
And the U.S. government just gave that back to a bunch of natives.
Some of it, yeah. They put missile silos out there, too,
Yeah.
but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But, in the end, Chicago was the warmest winter climate I'd lived in.
Crazy.
And when I turned 50, I'm like, no more.
Right.
I'm not in the winter going to live where it's winter. So started looking around and you know what? If you listen to me talk about living in Vegas, I will sound like a Chamber of Commerce speech. I love it here. I think it's the greatest city on earth. When it comes to property values and taxes and all the other things, for my business, I actually wanted to live in LA. And then I really wanted to remove 10 from the cost of a house, right?
Just one.
And you did.
Just one.
And
So
you
I
did.
Yeah.
And so being here and just enjoying everything that is Vegas has been great. Then, yes, in the summer, I go back to the Chicagoland area, live on the south end of the lake on a boat, and enjoy the hell out of watching the sunrise and sunset.
See all your posts.
I've seen them. And
One day I'm just gonna show up on a dock, looking for
Right.
Jeff.
with bottles of tequila.
I'm just gonna drink his right.
You can just drink whatever. There's always plenty of bottles. The funny thing was went from downsizing a house and put thousands of bottles of various wines and boozes and whatever and put them into storage. And last year, just started giving them out by the crate load. Like, just take them, people.
Well, listen, if
Can't
you ever
drink
need a
those.
storage place for them, I'm willing to.
You're willing to do that.
I'm willing to hold.
You'll need some more shelf space if that happens. But
I got a whole garage out there. I won't even park in the garage. We'll just build shelves.
so it gives the impression that I'm more well off than I am. This life, the agave life, the tequila life is done well, but I did it all on a pretty reasonable budget. But life doesn't suck, that's for sure. So
Vegas. What are you doing? A bunch of golfing. I know that.
I live over on a golf course. Golfing is a thing for me, and I wanted to. I started playing golf when I was 12, and did it a lot till about my mid-20s, and probably took roughly a 20-something year break.
Okay.
And wanted to get back into it because it's, to me, that pursuit of impossible perfection.
Well, you're hanging out with a bunch of golf guys here in town,
I
correct?
do.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a great group. I'll give it a shout out.
Yeah,
Tropicana Golf guys.
I follow them.
A lot of people, they might have randomly, if they have anything golf in their world, is run across Manolo. It's about making golf fun and more social.
Yeah, it's expensive for me because I lose a lot of balls on the buy more.
Yeah, and so every 2 weeks there's a par 3 course, probably not all that far from here.
Oh, the
North
North
Vegas one,
Par
Yep.
3?
where you'll see about 20 of us roll up,
Okay.
and we just have a skins game, and it's a bunch of guys, but you can have kids, women, whoever.
Yeah.
It's not just, but it's about being supportive and being social and having fun. And I don't care if it's the first time you're playing golf or we have a couple teaching pros that show up.
I was at a recent celebrity-owned restaurant that has a celebrity-owned tequila, or not owned, but supported tequila here in town.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, Jeff, where are you at tonight? I'm at this grand opening for this Las Vegas, now Las Vegas resident celebrity-owned restaurant." I said, he goes, "Oh, that's funny. I'm right next to her at Pop Stroke.
Ah,
And so after the event, I walked over and met Jeff and a couple of the guys in
is that the one in
Town Square?
Town Square?
Yeah. The one that
Right.
fire night before.
Right after you, like the day after you went.
Yeah.
Like we went, and I was like, "Food's not bad.
Food wasn't bad. It was very
Their selection is good.
tequila selection.
Yeah.
multiple G4 bottles, Fortaleza, some other brands, some okay-ish mezcals, a couple good mezcals.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're. I wouldn't be ashamed to send somebody about it. But anyway, I digress.
You know what? I mean, for everything and whatever with those things, the guy has done a lot of good things for the city, and he's going to continue to do it. And the guy crushes it, right?
And stuff.
He hasn't taken my tequila challenge yet. But
your challenge.
Wait.
It's additive free now, I guess, or was?
Yeah, it was.
But it's just because it's confirmed additive free doesn't mean it's good.
So, getting in on the whole confirmed.
This is going to be a 2-part show, by the way.
No, we're good.
All right.
I mean, we talk fast.
Yeah,
sure.
Getting into the whole additive free movement.
Sure.
Like, what's your take on the whole one? Let's go.
Are you trying to get him in trouble?
No.
Okay.
And if there's something,
I'll say what I can when I can, and the things I can't, I can.
Yeah.
Right.
So, let's get your take on the whole tequila match, CRT raid, like where the CRT is going as far as what's rumored out there as they're going to start penalizing brands for advertising that they're additive free. Like, what's your take on that?
No, they very much did. I mean,
letters.
In the end, the reality of it is the CRT and the NORMA, they are the only defined authority by law, right? Where we in the U.S. are used to a consumer-centric culture where you can have third-party independent lab verified, this, that, or the other. You can create your own gluten-free or non-GMO certification. This is a different government and a different set of rules, and those rules still exist. I believe there probably was, there could have been different paths that led to different outcomes in this situation, but in the end, they still have. And I've had good discussions, like I say, with people who are very respected. Brand owners and distillers in this industry have been doing it for a long time. And when I would have the discussion with them, it was, I remember a few years ago having an enlightening conversation with somebody, and I'm not going to name him because it is one of the best known brands out there. But he's like, I'm not adding anything that's an additive. I'm allowed to do this. And it wasn't an opinion. It was a matter of fact. It was because it's a matter of fact.
Right. It was defined. Right? Yeah.
And if that government doesn't allow for someone who's not an authority to make that judgment, that is their right. We might not like it as consumers and as Americans who want transparency, and we want everything on our label, and we want to know, I mean, go back to like some Portlandia joke, who was the chicken sister or something, right?
You got to keep it weird.
I love it.
When you get to something like that, that isn't a part of that NORMA. Whether we want it to be or not, it isn't our choice. Because of the community I'm in and the relationships I have, I know everybody on both sides of that equation for, when it came to that big collision,
mm-hmm.
I know everybody that caused it and the backlash behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, in my opinion, everybody had some form of right on their side.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, they're still the NORMA. They're still the laws.
Yeah.
Right. And so that just is. And Tommy talked about the letters that went out. It was very clear because there were people who had plans of, because in the end, Tequila Matchmaker is a third-party website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's nothing that we're putting out there as an advertisement if someone else's third-party website does. But when it became very clear that even that represented a threat.
Well, it's when the brand started using their own Tequila Matchmaker logos and on shirts and websites and
and that
labels.
That in the end, the CRT is right. They don't have the authority to do that.
Well, the CRT has to approve the label on a tequila bottle,
right?
As most people know. But what brands were doing when they're getting back to the United States, their local reps were sticking Tequila Matchmaker stickers on their bottles, which
and I've been on the backside of various discussions of, could the owner of the distillery just say, hey, I only put this in my tequila. as a way of indirectly saying it. Could a distillery owner say, I only put
3 ingredients.
water, yeast, and agave?
Mhm.
No.
You can't even say that.
No.
Really?
They will not approve that on the label.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
so it is, in the end, the law is the law. And until the law changes, it is you have to exist within that system.
Do you ever
Right.
think that it'll get to that point to where they're able to list the ingredients on the label, or is that always?
It's a curiosity to me because there's been rumors and motions and activities around having the entire spirits industry in the U.S. have to require to put that on. I don't tell you what, bourbon people don't want that on there.
Yeah, there's a lot
more than anything else. So that has been something. So until it becomes a all or nothing in the U.S. thing, where it becomes a national, you've got to have everything that goes into your bottle of bourbon or into your bottle of Fireball, whatever. You're not going to get one particular spirit to budge.
Right.
And even then, because of the trade agreements and everything else, they don't necessarily need to. They have that domain of provenance. They have that authority that is really internationally recognized. So I don't know if they will. Again, while they have the NORMA and the legal authority, they are, their foundation is as a sort of chamber of commerce type organization. And do they feel that the bigger members of that chamber of commerce, are they negatively impacted by doing that? Right? I mean, those are questions. And unless that does, why do they need to, in their opinion, need to change the law?
Right.
Do we expect to see brands that are no longer CRT or classified as tequila because of that?
I've been asked that a lot.
I mean, I see one brand in particular that has always been operated as not covered by the CRT, but
yeah, Caveito's, done it, and that's Javier has done very well in that particular realm. And I had in the last few months, come October, when a lot of the action sort of came around that, I got asked a lot, well, would you afford to do that? I'm like, no, because in the end, it's very easy to ask that question as a consumer.
Yep.
You haven't even glanced at considering the complexities if you do that as a brand owner or as a business owner.
Yep.
Because in the end, tell me where the non-certified agave spirit selection is on your local shelf at Lee's, right? There isn't.
Right.
And that becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at all the things that go into that, and you look at the decisions that get to be made, that just because you're making some stand for what you consider to be the greater good, that doesn't make it the right business decision.
Sure.
And I think at times we've come into a world where, well, you just have to, make your stand. Well, okay. Yeah, that just means you haven't been around this world long enough to know when you need to play by certain rules. So.
Well, I in this whole thing, even still to this day, I don't see the CRT as a bad guy. As a consumer, I don't even see it as a bad guy still.
I think
many do, but
and they can, but that's also then a very short look at history.
Completely.
Right?
Yeah.
If the CRT wouldn't have been around when it was formed, tequila today would not be recognizable. Right?
I mean, look at Tomas Estes and Julio Romeo.
Yeah.
Ambassadors, they're very CRT pro, but they're also very pro additive free or good made tequila.
Yeah, no, I mean, the CRT, by all means, has done things that probably actually kept a lot of traditional tequila alive in the past, as far as that goes. So you've got to look at the whole body of work, and you've got to look at where the authority lies.
Yeah, it's growing pains of tequila.
Yeah.
Well, and, from what I've heard is that brands can buy into the CRT. Whether or not I know this is true.
Well, you have to pay your dues.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the inner workings of that, so I really can't comment on it. I mean, I know they have different categories of your involvement based on
Patrons will rarely, but for the education side of things.
Right.
But then where is it when it comes to, how big of a producer are you and what voice do you have? It's somewhat, I think, democratic in, if you're someone making a couple thousand, a couple 100,000 liters a year versus a couple million liters a year, I think your voice is heard in various ways that way, but I really can't speak to it at all. That's speculation on my part. So
The additive-free thing, I think, is driven by the Instagram anyway. I think good tequila is good tequila no matter what.
I would agree.
I would agree.
Yeah. I think if it wasn't for Instagram, the CRT or tequila matchmakers done a lot of good stuff for tequila. It has informed a lot of us. I think it's also made us very reliant on other people's palates to tell us what's good tequila. And
I would agree with that too.
I think we struggle with that too.
Yeah, we all struggle with that because everyone has to go on their tequila journey a little bit, right? I mean, that would be like not giving Casamigos credit for the number of people that got introduced to tequila that likely have now moved on to better tequila or realized tequila wasn't supposed to be tasting that way.
If it wasn't for really nice tall bottles, I wouldn't even be in the tequila game.
If it weren't for all those things that got people on their tequila journey to reach where we're at, and we hope that more of them continue on that path, it wouldn't be there.
And see, if it wasn't for a wheat allergy.
A wheat allergy, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I was really big into craft beer. Brewed my own beer for years.
Yep.
Won actually a silver medal for a honey pilsner here in the state of Nevada.
Nice.
Yeah. And lo and behold, I started getting like runny noses and stuff every time I would drink beer. I thought it was the hops.
Yeah.
The floral aspect of things. And turns out it was the wheat. So I had to switch from beer to tequila.
Oh, there you go.
I know. I'm actually the same way. I'm a celiac, right?
Oh. Wow.
So, I thought that was the end of my life when would have been, I guess, now 16 years ago. I found out I was celiac because, I at one point in my life said that I would, replace every other liquid in my life with Guinness, right? On my Cheerios, on whatever.
Yeah. Breakfast beer.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
You get all your nutrients in that one. But I went from that to going, oh, wait, I can't do that, and changing a lot of other things. But, it's same way.
Reason to eat corn tortillas.
Right.
As if he didn't need another reason to do it.
Well, that's the other part of Mexico, too, is generally speaking, the cuisine is safe for someone like me, right?
Right.
So for
us.
Yeah.
It's not safe for me because I'll just keep eating it.
Well,
We all have our vices.
Yes.
Yeah, mine.
Well, Jeff, I do appreciate you being on the podcast, and Tommy, I appreciate wholeheartedly you being a co-host for this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, thank you.
Oh.
Have a good night, everybody.